We have become people who are forgiven. In other words, we have moved into a state or a status of a forgiven person. That's our position now. Romans chapter 4, verse 7, Paul writes, "Blessed are those whose transgressions are forgiven, whose sins are covered. Blessed is the one whose sin the Lord will never count against them." So all these sins that even after baptism, they're still embedded in my attitudes, they're in my flesh, they're in my shortcomings. The sin is still there in my condition. That sin is now covered over. It's covered by the blood of Christ. So that when God looks at us, He doesn't see the sin. He sees the covering. Isaiah 61:10. "I will greatly rejoice in the Lord. My soul shall exult in my God, for He has clothed me with the garments of salvation. He has covered me with the robe of righteousness." Okay, so I've got a visual to replace the visual of the ledger book or the whiteboard. And it's the visual, this here robe represents the robe of righteousness. Isaiah says, God has covered me with a robe of righteousness. So that when we are saved, God puts this robe of righteousness upon us. Now, what righteousness is this? I mean, is this our righteousness and our condition? No. What does Isaiah say? Isaiah 64:6. "All our righteous acts are like filthy rags." So, did you notice I was wearing my filthy rags this morning? Yes. Because normally I preach in a polo. In fact, 6 days out of 7 in a week, I'm wearing a VCC polo. Even when I cut the grass, I've got a VCC polo on. All right, so. But I've got my paint clothes on today. These are my raggedy clothes that are to represent, really, my own righteousness, my goodness. The best that I can do is filthy rags in the eyes of God. So no, this robe of righteousness is not my righteousness. Then where does it come from and what is it? Romans 5:18. Paul writes, "Just as one trespass or one sin resulted in condemnation for all people, so also one righteous act resulted in justification and life for all people." The one trespass or the one sin, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, death passed to all people. The one act of righteousness, the one righteous act was the second Adam, Jesus, death on the cross. His substitutionary death on our behalf. By that one righteous act, justification passes to all people. So the way salvation works, last week was just the gospel commands to obey to receive salvation. But here's the way salvation works, is that when Jesus was on the cross, God imputed to Him all of our sin. And He treated Jesus as if He were a sinner, as if what He had earned was punishment. So He treated Jesus, the righteous one, in that way, punished Him. And Jesus experienced the suffering that was equivalent to you and I spending eternity in hell. He took all of that on Himself. And then reverse, kind of a Freaky Friday reverse, God treated Jesus in that way so that He could treat us as if we were as righteous as Christ. Right? We're not in our condition, but in our position, in our status, He imputes to us the righteousness of Christ.